This talk was given by Roshi Rafe Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is March 1st, 2025, and as part of or continuing to read perspective chapters from a new book I'm working on, Zen, or a Zen Life as Pilgrimage, coming home to what Zen is really all about. I'd like to take up a koan today, which is the oak tree in the front garden. When you think about coming home, there it is, no longer wandering around, the oak tree in the front garden. So, to begin, if wisdom is real, it should be popping up all over in life, in folklore, in songs, and movies emerging from popular culture. Real wisdom should be common knowledge, not esoteric. You'll find your happiness lies right under your eyes, back in your own backyard. Sounds such a chord. And to quote Dorothy, there's no place like home. Still, why do such fundamental insights keep having to pop up? Why don't we just get it? The great Chao-chou, Joshu, his date 778 to 897, perhaps the most mature of all the Chinese masters, may have something to say about this. And this is Gateless Barrier, case 37, Chao-chu's oak tree in the front garden. A monk asked Chao-chu, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the west? Chao-chu said, the oak tree in the front yard. Wumen's commentary. If you can see intimately into the essence of Chao-chu's response, there is no Shakyamuni in the past and no Maitreya in the future. Wumen's verse. Words do not convey the fact. Phrases do not embody the spirit of the mind. Attached to words, your life is lost. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. So the question, why did Bodhidharma come from the West, is a Zen cipher for what is the highest teaching of the Buddhadharma, or what is the point of Zen? It questions why Bodhidharma, an Indian ex-prince, despite being already elderly, chose to make what was then the dangerous ocean crossing from southern India to China. In short, what was so important that he was willing to risk his own life to bring it over the sea? I was having lunch with Aitken Roshi in an Italian restaurant in Honolulu when I asked him something along those lines. I wasn't being clever. I'd been practicing Zen for a long time by then, over 20 years, had traveled quite a distance from upstate New York to see him there in Hawaii, and had myself gone through the struggles, turmoils, failures, and issues that marked Zen Buddhism's initial settling into the West. Roshi, I asked, what is this Zen thing, anyway? Why do we do it? He answered quickly, saying, happiness. Then he stopped, put down his fork, and sat quietly, as if he'd noticed something not quite right, as if he'd caught himself mouthing a cliché. Then he looked at me and said, no, many people in this world are happy. They're absorbed in their work or family or hobbies. No longer caught up in themselves, they're happy. But if impermanence has bitten too deeply, and a yearning for something more, a way to be at peace in the face of impermanence itself has taken root, then Zen can show you the way to happiness. Is it happiness, then, that resides at the core of Zen? Did gruff old Bodhidharma have a soft heart and make that risky journey because he wanted us to be happy? Is that why he left India for China? But what is happiness? Real happiness. And how do we find it? Our times are complex and deeply troubled. Have we a right to be happy when so many are suffering? Wouldn't it be more respectful and genuine for us to remain glum or anxious or troubled when greed, anger, and ignorance are running rampant and injustice, climate change, fascism, misogyny, and racism are in our faces? Though keen awareness of impermanence and its terrors was the essence of the Buddha's life koan, leading him to abandon a privileged life and sheltered home, how shall we here, in our difficult times, manage to deal with the same fundamental anguish the Buddha faced of knowing that we must inevitably sicken, age, and die? What is that highest truth that brought an archaic smile to the Buddha's lips in the face of his terrifying recognition of impermanence? And a question for those who think Buddhism is pessimistic. What do you make of the Buddha's smile? Can we find this same liberating truth, this happiness? Do we dare? Happiness in the face of so many personal, cultural, national, and global difficulties can seem so radical as to be beyond belief, a cop-out. And yet, what's wrong with joy? The monk in this koan seems to have been as bothered by the abysmal facts of life as the Buddha himself had been some 1,500 or so years earlier, as we ourselves might be now, some 1,500 years later. The grim reaper's skeletal smile lies behind the question he puts to Chao-chou, the great teacher of his time. What is Zen really about? What does it offer me? What is the highest, purest, truest, deepest teaching of the Buddhadharma? Why did that old red-bearded Indian or Persian barbarian Bodhidharma journey boldly over the sea to China from the west? What was missing in China then? What was so important? In the Book of Serenity, Shoyoroku, a monk asked Seigan, "What is the essence of Buddhism?" Seigan answered, "What is the price of rice in Roryo?" What is the essence of Buddhism? He answered, "What is the price of rice in Roryo?" If it's that simple, why did old Bodhidharma bother to undertake that risky journey? Ships sank attempting that crossing. Travelers drowned. What was so important about Zen Buddhism that Bodhidharma was willing to risk his life to bring it over the sea? And by the way, once he arrived, he wasn't welcomed with open arms either. Some of the Buddhist teachers in China, feeling threatened by this new Zen thing, actually, at least according to venerable legend, tried to poison Bodhidharma to keep him from stealing, or to their self-righteous minds, corrupting their students. But really, what was the big deal? By the time Bodhidharma arrived, around the year 500 or so, Buddhism had already been in China for several hundred years. Devotions, mindfulness, meditation, chanting, sutra study, and the practice of accumulating merit by doing good deeds, like building temples, supporting monastics, releasing animals meant for slaughter, were all established practices. What did Bodhidharma's Zen Buddhism offer that caused such a ruckus? What is the highest, deepest truth of the Buddha's teaching? And what made it so radical in the sense of going to the root, even dangerous to the social order, that Bodhidharma's heir, Wei Ke, was murdered by the governor of the province for teaching it? And if it is radical, how can it bring happiness to ordinary folks like you and me? Wouldn't we have to be radical and unrestrained, even outrageous, to also get it? Why, as ordinary as we are, can and do we practice this revolutionary path of the highest teaching, which is essentially Bodhidharma Zen? For koan students, Doksan, a word literally meaning going alone, and facing the teacher as well as ourselves without any of our usual supports can be challenging. even stressful. So don't we have enough stress in our life? Might it make sense for us to find an easier, less demanding path? Of course, less challenging paths might also be less rewarding, and as the conventional wisdom has it, nothing worthwhile is ever attained without perseverance, courage, effort. And indeed, Zen stories offer an inspiring record of the fierce efforts of those who came before us, so many of whom worked terribly hard to free themselves of their mind-forged manacles. That's William Blake from his poem London in the Songs of Experience. One of the most central of such founding stories is that of Wei Ke, a monk who, after years of meditation, reading, and sutra study, finally became desperate to realize the highest, realest truth for himself. Hearing of the teacher, Bodhidharma, newly arrived from India, the land of the Buddha, he braved a mountain in winter to beg for his help, and was rebuffed, told that he wasn't sincere or committed or strong enough, that the great way was too hard for the likes of them. Legend has it that he cut off his arm to prove his resolve. While his arm may actually have been chopped off in an encounter with bandits, the legend serves its purpose, reminding us that this highest teaching, whatever it is really worth something. So, what is this highest teaching of the Buddhadharma? This vital something that motivated Bodhidharma to risk his life and sail from southern India to China, which lay to the east. And how did this, some 500 years after Bodhidharma, turn into something as simple and confounding as the oak tree in the front garden? This is why Bodhidharma crossed the sea. This is what Wei Ke cut off his arm to get. Is Chao-chou telling us that compassion is the highest meaning? That Bodhidharma was so compassionate, he came for the sake of even this tree? Or that the whole meaning of the Buddhadharma is compassion for all things, even down to trees and plants? Or is he saying that this oak tree is Buddha? All things are Buddha. Look, look! Alas, if we allow ourselves to settle for any of that, we'll have wandered into the weeds, for these are concepts, good ones to be sure, but concepts nonetheless. And all concepts, even the best ones, deconstruct in the end. They come apart when the chips are down. Given this, Wei Ke would have been a fool to cut off his arm for such comforting pleasantries, no matter how profound. Indeed, Bodhidharma could have written any of that down on a piece of paper and sent it to China without needing to risk his life. So why did he risk it? And what does this have to do with an oak tree in the front garden? The question of the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West would have been intimate for the Zen teachers of Chao-chou's time. Their own awakenings have been made possible by the pioneering efforts of Bodhidharma and Wei Ke. The Buddha initially opened the path, but Bodhidharma brought it to life, making it work for them. He trimmed away the cosmically philosophical leaves and branches of Indian Buddhism and gave Chinese Buddhists the root, which is what we term Zen. And what is that teaching? Tradition frames it like this: without dependence on special texts, words, or letters, but pointing directly to mind itself, becoming Buddha, just as we are. Additionally, for Chinese Buddhists, while the West literally meant India, the home of the Buddha, and so the Buddhist Holy Land, the West also implied the Western paradise of Amitabha Buddha, Buddha of boundless light. So the question additionally asks something richer and more complex. Why did Bodhidharma, traditionally seen as an emanation of Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva of compassion, descend from the Western paradise to come down to China with its wars, intrigues, and political tangles? What was so important that it moved him to leave that magnificent heaven and descend to our mundane world? The first case of the Blue Cliff record sets this up. Emperor Wu, having asked the newly arrived teacher Bodhidharma for the highest teaching, was told, vast emptiness, nothing to be called holy. Confused by that response, he asked, who are you? In short, aren't you a holy man? Bodhidharma's answer to that, I don't know, drew yet another blank from the dumbfounded sovereign. Seeing how things stood, Bodhidharma left the emperor slack-jawed, crossed the Yangtze River, went up to a cave in the mountain above Shaolin Monastery, and settled down to 9 years of wall-gazing zazen. The koan's conclusion includes, later, the emperor brought this up to the Prince Chi, who asked, does your majesty know who this man is? The emperor said, I don't know. Prince Chi said, he is the Bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara, transmitting the Buddha mind seal. What is the highest? What is fundamental, not just to our practice, but to our lives? Don't we yearn to realize the most meaningful perspective on our all too brief time here? The Emperor Wu did, but Bodhidharma's response left him baffled. Half a century or so after this initial encounter, Chao-chou was asked the same question. What is the highest teaching of the Buddhadharma? Couched in a specifically Chinese way, as why did Bodhidharma come from the West? His answer, the oak tree in the garden, also leaves many baffled. How does speaking of a tree answer the question of the meaning of our life, yours and mine? How does it reveal the deepest possible reason for Bodhidharma's journey over the sea? Chao-chou, one of the greatest of all the Tong-era Zen teachers in that golden age of Zen, had his first realization at the age of 18 or 19. At 56, he had a profoundly complete satori. After that, he traveled for another 30 years, checking his understanding against the teachers of his time, and not until the age of 80 did he settle down and begin to teach, which he continued doing until his death at 120. Chao-chou did not rely on the stick or the shout. His revelatory words were quiet and subtle, coming in under the radar, so seemingly ordinary yet intimate you'd hardly know he'd already presented it fully and moved on. Other great teachers, awed, said that Chao-chou's lips flashed light. Master Dogen, who is very sparing in his praise of the old teachers, called Chao-chou the ancient Buddha. This is beyond Zen, beyond Buddhism. High praise indeed. As for the oak or cypress tree, koan, some would say it's a cypress, Zen tradition adds that when Chao-chou was asked by the monk, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from India? And he answered, the oak or cypress tree in the garden, the dialogue continued further. The monk said, Reverend, please do not use an object to guide me. Chao-chou said, I'm not using an object. The monk said, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from India? Chao-chou said, the cypress tree in the garden. You can find a version of this as number 12 in James Green's The Recorded Sayings of Zen Master Joshu. An object suggests that the monk assumed that Chao-chou's response implied inner and outer world, object, subject, and was challenging him on this. Aitken Roshi comments, don't suppose that the resolution of this point lies in the identity of inside and outside. That is philosophy. What is the true fact? He adds that other monks came to test Chao-chou as well. A monk asked Chao-chou, has the oak tree Buddha nature? Chao-chou said, it has. The monk said, when does the oak attain Buddhahood? In other words, if it has Buddha nature, then one day it should attain Buddhahood. So he asked, when does the oak attain Buddhahood? Chao-chou said, when the great universe collapses. The monk said, when does the great universe collapse? Chao-chou said, when the oak tree attains Buddha. When the sky rolls back and the ground beneath our feet vanishes, what is revealed? When Zen's Chicken Little finds that her sky is falling, she is overcome with laughter. Intimate, indeed. Wumen's commentary on the oak tree case says, if you can see intimately into the essence of Chao-chou's response, there is no Shakyamuni in the past and no Maitreya in the future. What is intimately? Thoughts about Buddhism and its meaning, as well as thoughts about Chao-chou's response, are not intimate. They, like all philosophy and concepts, remain outside the gate, and so won't solve our fundamental dilemma, how to live compassionately, happily, and peacefully in the face of the challenges of an impermanent life. Further, why will there be no Maitreya in the future, no Shakyamuni in the past for you? Won't it be rather lonely, not to mention risky, to continue on without such wise and compassionate guides? Where'd they go, anyway? Wumen sets us straight with his verse on the case. Words do not convey the fact. Language is not an expedient. Attached to words, your life is lost. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. Words do not convey the fact. What is the fact? Well, words are or can be just this. The word water allays no thirst. The word rice eases no hunger. The word tree offers no shade. Attached to words are life. When a cup is a thing called cup, do we feel the rough and smooth of its glaze, see its subtle shimmer of its color, experience the heft of it moving through our muscles and body as we hold it in our hand? Or are we off elsewhere, wandering in our heads, thinking of bills to be paid, the arborist coming to the oak tree in the front yard? The tea we are drinking is wet, sure, but do we really know its flavor? And where does such flavor come from? Is it in the tea leaves, in us, or where? Identifying with thoughts, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we shut the garden gate. With that loss, I am in here, and you and everything else out there. Splitting the world, the garden withers. But Chao-chou's oak tree is rooted in the original garden. Awakening to it, we can re-enter a place we've never truly left. To be blocked by phrases and stuck on a koan may not be so bad. Because we are stuck, because we have come to the end of logic, we have a chance to step beyond the too small fishbowl of an overly mentalized life. Because we are bewildered and know that we are, we can cross our legs, count 3 to 10. Experience this breath. Commit single-mindedly to this koan and keep going until we and the oak and all things and no things fall away and just oak tree in the front garden. This koan became a big deal in Zen circles in ancient China. After Chao-chou's death, Zen master Fa Yen, Hogan, 855 to 958, came to one of Chao-chou's heirs, Wei Chou, Japanese Ekaku, and asked, I heard that your late master had a saying, the oak tree in the courtyard. Is that correct? Wei Chao said, no. Yan said, anyone who's been around will say that a monk asked him about the meaning of Bodhidharma's coming from the West, and that he answered, the oak tree in the courtyard. How can you maintain he didn't say it? And Wei Chao said, he really didn't say it. Please don't slander him. By the way, some of the old teachers seem to have held this dialogue to be as great a koan as that of the oak tree in the front garden itself. What's up with that? What's up with, he really didn't say it, please don't slander him? Allowing the oak tree to steal away all we cling to, even ourselves, we let our acorns fall as they may. Zen Master Dogen remains our touchstone. When we move the self forward to become one with the 10,000 things, it is called delusion. When the 10,000 things step in and realize themselves as the self, it is realization or intimacy. Blake wrote, the fool sees not the same tree that the wise man sees. That's from his Proverbs of Hell, the marriage of heaven and hell. While Blake was clear and direct, Zen might give this a twist and say that the fool's view might be even better than the wise man. The wise man can be caught up in his own wonderful wisdom, while a fool might have nothing at all in mind. Who sees more clearly, more truly? Regardless, Blake's actual point remains important. His wise man looks at a tree, sees a living being, woven into the fabric of life, offering gifts of oxygen and food, shelter, shade, and green shimmering beauty, a living miracle. Blake's fool, on the other hand, might look at the same tree and only see a potential pile of lumber worth so much cash, an ornament for the lawn, or an impediment to his view. The Amazon rainforest can tell you all you want to know about Blake's fool, as can old-growth trees around the world. In 2006, excuse me one sec. In 2006, Rose and I, along with Sunyana Graf Roshi of the Vermont Zen Center and her Sangha, went on pilgrimage to Zen sites in China. We visited Chao-chou's Bailin, Cypress Grove Monastery, and there saw the living oak or cypress tree in the front garden. Actually, one grown from a cutting of the original tree. There it stood, waving its branches and leaves in the wind. Was this why Bodhidharma came from the West? How do we make Chao-chou's answer our own? How will we live intimately? What does that even mean? Despite our current difficulties, indeed, perhaps because of them, Chao-chou's oak tree stands ready to help us find Zen's path to rooted happiness. I am deeply grateful to Aitken Roshi, who is a quietly insightful Chao-chou of our time, kindly stopped and took a moment to point out the old road to happiness for me all those years ago. We'll stop here and recite our great vows for all.